Guys, welcome back to True Crime with Shannon, where I cover missing persons, unsolved cases, crime news, and more. Have you guys heard of this horrific story? I actually first saw it covered in the Sun a couple days ago, and it's gotten a lot more credibility through Law and Crime and local affiliates like WBL TV in Baltimore. And let me play their clip from it. This is a horrific story of a father trying to do the right thing and protect his kids. And because of it, he has lost his life.
They didn't just ruin our lives. Their lives are going to be changed forever. Their parents' lives are going to be changed forever. And nobody thinks about that, just from a fight.
43-year-old Christopher Wright was killed protecting his kids from a fight that started at Brooklyn Park Middle School Friday and was brought to his doorstep in Anne Arundel County.
So then Chris came out and to tell them, he's not coming out here to fight. And they had threatened at one point to come in and get him. And then they had said that if he's not gonna fight, then you're gonna fight us.
Tracy Karabczynski, Wright's fiance, says 3 teens and 2 adults showed up at her house looking to fight her 14-year-old son. But what happened next was criminal.
The damage was done before the ambulance ever took him away. He had had a seizure. It was done. There was nothing that the hospital could do.
I'll never forget the sounds. I'll never forget the noises my nephews made when we had to tell them he was gone.
Wright was taken to shock trauma Friday and pronounced dead Saturday from a traumatic brain injury. The incident was caught on the victim and a neighbor's security camera.
I was at shock trauma initially, and my dad and I tried to go onto the camera to look. And the first video that comes up is my 12-year-old son screaming, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy," and running out of the house to go into the street and help his dad. And I couldn't watch anymore after that. I just couldn't.
School officials confirmed the fight between the teens and say they worked to address the issue. Now they're working with police on the investigation.
Anybody who assisted or abetted or was an accomplice of the main suspect or the primary suspect in this incident would be culpable.
Karabczynski says Chris was a devoted father who loved the stars and gardening. Her best friend taken over senseless violence.
It's everywhere. It is everywhere. And somewhere we as parents are failing these children. As parents, we're failing. It's not the school's responsibility. It's our responsibility.
Wright's family is planning a candlelight vigil to honor his memory.
Well, about 6 days in to this incident in this horrific death of Maryland father Christopher Wright, we're learning more details about what sparked this whole fight situation. So this is from the New York Post. It was posted today. Maryland father Christopher Wright was killed while protecting his son from a fight sparked by a schoolyard dispute over $30. Now this is being told to the New York Post by fiance Tracy Karabczynski. She informed that, of course, her fiance died from traumatic brain injuries on Friday, which was apparently on Saturday, after 5 teenagers and adults who had been looking for Christopher's son, which was 14-year-old Trenton, came to their home. And after Christopher would not let them fight his son, he came outside and they decided to fight him instead. So, in other words, they just came to the house and they were going to fight. If they weren't going to fight his 14-year-old kid, their 14-year-old son, they were going to fight the dad. They came there to fight. And the sad thing is, police were not called early enough. And I suppose this father, it sounds to me like he was just trying to de-escalate the situation. And he's probably like, "We're not fighting, go home," and whatnot. And of course, that's not how it happened. Then she goes on to say, looking at the damage that was done to him, it wasn't just punching. There's no way that punching did that. The damage was done before the ambulance took him away and he had a seizure. So this is from the New York Post. It was posted today. Maryland father Christopher Wright was killed while protecting his son from a fight sparked by a schoolyard dispute over $30. Now, this is being told to the New York Post by fiance Tracy Kaparsky. She informed that, of course, her fiance died from traumatic brain injuries on Friday, which was apparently on Saturday, after 5 teenagers and adults who had been looking for Christopher's son, which was 14-year-old Trenton, came to their home, and after Christopher would not let them fight his son, he came outside and they decided to fight him instead. Tracy informed the Post that the fight involved another teenager. She suspects that Wright may have been hit with a blunt object that this group had brought with them. So Christopher somehow was hit with some sort of object during this fight that ultimately caused his seizure and death. On Wednesday, Trenton was walking near the school, and a kid who's not related to the fatal fight, oddly enough, came up to him and said, "I stole $30 from your girlfriend," or something along those lines, Tracy told the Post. He had the money in his hands, and then Trenton went to get the money, and in his reaction, he hit the kid. He hit him once, and that was the end of it. So there was a fight that did come out, but apparently it was just a punch, and they thought that was the end of it. Tracy explained that Trenton had been suspended from school last Monday over another fight, and when he went back to school Friday morning, a group of friends, some who would show up on her doorstep later that day, began harassing him. And looks like this is a picture of Christopher with his son, Trenton. Right before lunch, he walked into the bathroom and there were about 20 people in there, including the one kid who wanted to fight him, she said. The other kids were there to watch and video the fight. Yeah, because fighting is so cool. Yeah, no, I don't think so, guys. Trenton was left with a big bump on his head, but did not tell any of the adults about the altercation as he was fearful of another suspension, she informed. Now, when school let out at 4 p.m., Trenton went walking back home when he was accosted again by the boy he'd fought earlier, and a brawl erupted when another group of boys joined the fray. It became a complete brawl. Trenton was getting hit from every which way, so he ended up crawling out to try and leave. Literally, he was on the ground and crawled away. He couldn't even tell who he was getting hit by, Tracy informed. And that's a picture of Tracy with Christopher. After escaping, Trenton walked home. Then around 4:45 p.m., 3 of the boys Trenton had fought that day showed up with 2 adults. Their dad came in the house and said, "Your friends are outside," not knowing what had happened at school. And my oldest son came downstairs and said they're not his friends and explained what was going on. So their dad, which was Christopher Wright, came outside to tell them, "Trenton's not coming out. My son's not going to fight." And the group threatened to break into the house and fight there. One of the adults then said, "If your son's not going to fight, then you're going to fight." The group proceeded to attack Wright, and Tracy says it was a very brutal thing. It wasn't just 2 people fighting. My son said his dad was thrown to the ground at one point. I know there was punching. My son said he was being slammed around against the ground. Kaparsky's eldest son, Tristan, 16 years old, ran out to help his father and saw one of the boys pull something out of the trunk of their car. My son has no idea what he got out of the trunk. We don't know if Christopher Wright was hit with something. She has previously said the extent of Wright's injury suggested he may have been beaten by more than just fists, saying you don't get catastrophic brain damage from a fist fight. At one point, my son was on the ground and he could see his father was on the ground as well. His dad had stopped moving and the adult was still hitting him. The guy fighting him said out loud, "Oh my God, he's bleeding," handed my son his dad's necklaces that had come off in the fight and said, "I'm sorry," and to call 911. They all ran to the SUV and left. They left in one car. Classy folks, aren't they? The next day, Tracy laid with Wright while he was comatose in the hospital. She said while holding his hands, she realized that there was no bruising on them. I held his hands. There was no bruising on his hands, she said. You would have bruises from punching people. His hands weren't swollen, nothing. He did not fight back. I don't know how quickly he was unconscious, but he never defended himself. Wow. The neurosurgeon came out to talk with me and explained they would do an emergency brain surgery. He had severe brain damage. The surgery lasted about 3.5 hours. By the time I was taken to him, his severe brain injury had turned into a catastrophic brain injury. After the surgery, they were doing constant CAT scans, and they had stopped some bleeding in the brain. But then they saw he'd had a stroke and had bleeding from the brainstem that they couldn't do anything about. Police have been tight-lipped about their investigation and said Monday they suspected 3 to 4 adults had been involved in the attack. It's unclear if any arrests have been made. Yeah, I don't think that any arrests have been made because I was checking on that this afternoon and I am seeing nothing. And I'm seeing nothing on their Twitter. I'm seeing nothing on their Facebook. Only thing I am seeing is the police department is investigating. My concern is this happened Friday. This all brawl out fight happened Friday evening. Okay, this is, as I record this video, this is Thursday evening. Why has there not been any arrests at this point? There should be charges and they should be brought against at least 1 or 2 of these individuals, if not more. And I believe there's more. But I'm hoping that we're going to hear about it very soon. And I hope that they're not dragging their feet. So all we can hope for is that they will be charging the parties responsible. And we will soon hear about that because this is just not okay. It sounds like that, yeah, these kids all had some issues. Granted, you know, he's 14 years old. That's Trenton right there with his dad. And, you know, he obviously wasn't completely innocent in all, and he was involved in some fights. However, it seemed like he was trying to do the right thing and pull out of this fight. He went home, and his father told them that he's not going to fight. And he went out there, I guess, to hopefully chase them out of his yard and what have you. And instead, they beat on him. What is being taught to our kids at home? Because this all begins at home. If there were adults present, I still have to wonder who were the adults. Was one of these adults a father of one of these other kids? Was it an uncle? An older brother? Who were these adults? It's bad enough that you have teenage kids doing it, but you're going to have adults coming over to someone's house and beating this father who, it sounds like, didn't even defend himself, which I don't understand, because at some point I would have defended myself if I was being attacked, if it was me. But this just should not have happened. There's just no excuse for it whatsoever. So my condolences go out to this entire family right now, and I'm really, really hoping that law enforcement and the DA's office does the right thing and finds these individuals who murdered. They murdered Christopher. They murdered this man in front of his home and in front of his children. They need to be charged and they need to, pay the price for what they've done. So let me know what you think of this one in the comments. And with that said and done, that's all I've got for this one. I hope you have a great rest of the day. And most of all, stay safe.